Welcome to episode 45 of the Midwest Angler Podcast. I'm Scott Sturman, joined by Matt Deitch, the same as every other one for the last 44 episodes. But, yep, you're stuck with us
43. Again. I was gone one.
That's right,
Stu the noob.
Big Stu. Yeah, no, yep. So, yep, 45. We got a really cool episode today.
Right.
Darren Troseth with Three Rivers Fishing Adventures up in Jordan, Minnesota.
We're talking big fish.
We are talking big fish, the biggest fish.
Right, like lay down beside them and they're still bigger than you.
Right. No, Darren actually holds the record for the biggest sturgeon caught in Minnesota. And, I think, I don't know, possibly the biggest fish ever caught in Minnesota. We'll have to ask him.
It's going to be interesting to find out.
Right. So, we'll get right over to him because you don't need to hear us talk. Hey, Darren, you there, man?
I sure am.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. For the listeners, we're here today with Darren Troseth, the owner of Three Rivers Fishing Adventures up in, where are we, Jordan, Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm actually located in Jordan, and as the name says, I do Three Rivers. So I do the Minnesota River, the Mississippi River, and St. Croix River. So it's basically kind of covers the southern metro area. So
right on.
So then you're not too far out of Minneapolis.
No, not at all. In fact, I kind of say I'm in Minneapolis because I basically drive through there most of the time getting to my spots. So, basically metro.
Very cool. Well, set the stage for us, Darren. Where did you grow up and how did you get into fishing?
So I grew up on Lake Vermilion, which a lot of people are familiar with in Minnesota. It's a pretty popular lake, especially I see the new muskie record was caught there the other day. They just certified it yesterday, so that's pretty cool. But anyways, I grew up on Lake Vermilion, and my family fished quite a bit. My grandfather mainly I'd just go live out at his place on his cabin there on the lake, and we'd fish every day. And from the time I could walk, I basically fished every day with him, so that really set the stage for me.
Very cool. What species did you target early on?
It was all walleye. That's basically the only thing my grandpa wanted to catch was walleye, so we would just go, and every morning we'd just go out and drift across the bay and catch some walleyes.
Cool. I've never been up to Vermilion, and it seems like it would be a great place to fish. Everybody that talks about it just talks about the diversity of it.
Yeah, there's really nothing bad to say about Vermilion other than, the popularity lately. It's really expanded since I've been up there, but it's still a great lake. I believe it has the most shoreline in the whole state. It's not the biggest lake acreage-wise, but has most shoreline, so lots of places to get away from the wind and away from people if you want to.
Right.
Now, well, like you said, you started off on walleyes, but you've moved on to some bigger fish. Tell us about Three Rivers Fishing Adventures and the species you target.
So I couldn't really find much for work up there when I lived up on the Iron Range up there, so I ended up moving down here to try to find some work, and ended up moving to Shakopee, which is right next to the Minnesota River. And I had never been introduced to catfish or anything, and I was fishing, on the local lakes around here, just go down to the docks and the piers and fish for bass and pike or whatever I could catch. And one day I had some sucker minnows I was pike fishing, and they kind of died on me. And someone mentioned I should go try down by the river for some catfish down there. And I thought, well, why not? I never tried it before, so I kind of did a little research on some short spots I could fish. This was kind of before Google Maps and everything. I just kind of walked down bike trails and stuff and found a spot I thought might be good. And I threw out some dead sucker minnows, and I actually ended up catching like a 45-pound cat that first time within 20 minutes. And after that, I was done for. After I caught that fish, I broke my rod, and I was up to my thighs in mud, and I was just shaking. So that was done for after that.
Yeah. So now, what are some of your favorite techniques to use when targeting catfish like that?
Well, catfishing is pretty much bottom fishing. There's not a whole lot of special techniques. When we're doing these flatheads, though, we're using a lot of live baits, live bullheads, live sucker minnows. We're mainly targeting current seams, creek mouths, drop-offs. We're just going out after dark and sitting and waiting. it's not a whole lot of active targeting, I guess. That's kind of the reason I like it. I kind of just go out to relax more than making it a job, you know?
Right.
Now, is this something you do full time then, or do you have another
I
job?
do not. No, I work a full-time job at a medical device company. I'm a R&D technician, making medical devices, I guess. So yeah, this is more of a part-time thing. I started this about 4 years ago. There was one guy around the area that was doing catfish and sturgeon, and he retired here recently, and I thought it might be a good opportunity, since no one else was doing it, to get in and start doing the guiding thing. And I really got a nice little show for my wife to go get my captain's license and everything. So without her, I might not have done it. So
Right
I
on.
thank her for that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So now, like with the catfish and everything, what makes them such a nocturnal feeder? It seems like they bite better at night like that, especially the flatheads.
I think a lot of it has to do with the light conditions. It's not so much on the Minnesota River because the water's so dirty. I mean, you can catch them throughout the day, but they're definitely, predators, and they don't have much for sight, so they're just built for, dark, dirty water and low light conditions, and they can, capture their prey a lot easier in those low light conditions. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Right on.
Now, you also do sturgeon. That is also a nighttime bite too, correct?
It is, and honestly, it's not necessarily a nighttime bite. I tell people that you can catch them throughout the day. I know a lot of people who do. I catch them myself during the day. In fact, I did do a trip here a couple weeks ago during the day, and we caught plenty of fish. Mostly, I do it at night because the wind is a huge factor when catching these fish, detecting bites. They bite so light. In the windy conditions, it's really hard to detect the bites. So I try to time my trips when the wind dies and when the boat traffic dies. I don't know if either of you have been on the St. Croix River, but it's probably the most recreated body of water in the metro area. So it's just a circus out there.
I don't think
I've never been up to the St. I've been by it, but I've never fished on it before.
Yeah, it gets like my earlier trips in September when there's still a lot of big boats out there. I mean, it's almost to the point of being dangerous out there anchored, in the channel.
Yeah.
Now, you've been doing a lot of sturgeon trips lately. Is this the time of year to be doing that, or was it because of high water levels, or I mean, is there a certain time of year that's better than others?
Yeah, they really get active when I found when the water temp it's about 55, and from 55 right up till ice up is when they start getting really active. And I'm not sure why that is. I think they are more of a cold water fish. Some of the theories are, that when the water turns over, it kind of, allows those fish to go throughout the whole water column. Whereas during the summer, they might be a little more suspended. So, we basically bottom fish for these, or bottom, throw our bait on the bottom. So when the lakes or when the river stratifies, it makes it easier. They're all over the place. So I think that's part of it too.
Now, what species of sturgeon are these?
These are lake sturgeon.
Lake sturgeon. Okay.
Yep.
Now,
there's two species of sturgeon here. We have the lake sturgeon and the shovel nose. And I've never caught a shovel nose on the St. Croix. Everyone thinks when they catch a small lake sturgeon, they immediately think it's a shovel nose, but I have yet to see a shovel nose on the St. Croix. I have caught several on the Minnesota, though, so they're pretty easy to tell apart. The shovel nose has a real skinny tail. As soon as you see the difference, it's pretty obvious.
All right.
now you get flathead and I'm assuming some channel catfish. Do you ever get any blues up there, or what catfish do you normally catch?
It's all channels and flatheads, and until I see one, there's no blue cats in Minnesota. There's not been one confirmed blue cat in Minnesota, so if someone says they're catching blues, they're not.
They're catching big channels.
Channel catfish, yeah.
Right, they're all channel cats. They see the color and they say, "Oh, this is a blue." There's no blue cats. They might catch a fluke one in a million, but there's none here.
Very cool. Now, what does a catfish trip consist of? What if any of our listeners are thinking, go on your Facebook page and see some of these monster catfish that you're catching, what can they expect in a trip?
So basically what I do is I try to gauge, what their expectations are. If they're looking for, big flatheads or numbers of fish, or perhaps even just channel cats. Some people just want to catch channel cats. But what I like to do is I'll go out and throw out a few different baits. I'll throw out a cut bait. I'll throw out a large live bait, because I've caught monster flatheads on just a little piece of cut bait too. So we'll go out and we'll just hit 5 or 6 different spots and try to catch some fish, I guess. I would say a good night is probably 10 fish. When we're targeting the big flatheads, anything from 3 to 5 is probably a really good night. We don't catch a lot of these big flatheads, so it's more of a waiting game. So that's why I like to keep a piece of cut bait out too, because we will catch channel cats within there too, just kind of to pass the time catching some fish. So, but mainly it comes down to people's expectations, what they're wanting to do. Some people just want to come out and catch a few, so they're not really looking for the big flatheads.
Right. Now, is that roughly the same as a sturgeon trip? You obviously can you overlap the trips? I mean, do you ever do a catfish trip and a sturgeon trip? Do you catch sturgeon on a catfish trip often? How does that work?
So what I do, I normally fish cats from like the end of May until September 1st, and that's when I switch over to sturgeon. So I kind of keep them separated. The sturgeon are only on the St. Croix, and there are very nice catfish out there, but they're a little harder to target, so the consistency just isn't there. So basically once September hits, I just fish for sturgeon on the St. Croix. And any cats we catch out there is just a bonus, but we do catch some nice ones out there. Earlier this year, I had a guy with his 14-year-old son and his friend, and we caught a 53-pounder out there with just on a worm, fishing for sturgeon. So you just never know.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about fishing in a river. You just never know what you're going to hook into, really. Yeah,
out there on the St. Croix, it's really cool because there's basically everything that swims is out there. We catch a lot of mud puppies there. We catch eels. We catch sheephead, drum. We catch you name it. We catch it. They're out there. So. Yeah, you just never know.
We have a river that runs through town here, and every once in a while somebody will catch a big flathead in there. Scott did a couple years ago. Now we're starting to get a few sturgeon in our river here coming up from the Missouri, so that's kind of neat too.
That's really cool. Yeah, it seems like they are expanding, and I know the Minnesota DNR is working pretty hard at stocking them in some new areas where they're native to, which is really cool. And as far as I know, Iowa doesn't have any sort of season on sturgeon, and it sounds like people are starting to catch them. So hopefully your DNR looks into it and maybe allows you to start catching them down there.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I saw on your Facebook page the other day that I believe one of your customers actually caught a tagged sturgeon. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, I forget what the number is. I want to say it's like a couple thousand fish they have out there tagged. Maybe I'm way high on that. But anyways, they do have a large number, and I'm guessing I probably catch, maybe a dozen a year on my trips. So it's really nice. You turn in your tag to the fisheries, and they give you kind of the history of the fish, where it's been, how many times it's been recaptured, and just kind of fun little thing to see how it's being managed.
Now, that one that you caught the other day, that was from Wisconsin, correct?
Yes.
How old was that?
We've actually had a few different Wisconsin tags, and they tag them kind of up by Taylor's Falls. And one of them that a friend of mine caught actually was caught 100 miles away up in Yellow Lake, Wisconsin. So it basically traveled over 2 dams and 100 miles to get where we caught it. So that was pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
How old are these fish?
So a 40-inch fish, I believe, is about 20 years old. I think 50 is probably like 30 years old, and they start spawning at about that time, 40 to 50 inches. So they don't spawn until they're like 25 years old.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
and that's why there's such tight restrictions on them, because it's a pretty fragile fishery.
Right. Well, how about a big flathead catfish? What's the age on something like that? That's like a 50 pounder.
I think say like a 40 to 50 pound flathead is probably about 20 to 25 years old, I think. They don't get quite as old.
Okay.
We are in kind of the far northern range of them, so they are older and slower growing than the fish further south. They get bigger a lot faster.
Okay.
So it's another fishery that's kind of fragile, and I was part of a DNR workshop group that got a season put on them, actually. So in the wintertime, they actually hibernate. It's not real hibernation, but that's kind of what it's like. They just go into their winter holes and they just lay dormant till the water warms up. So they're really vulnerable. If people, with underwater cameras and stuff, they can locate these fish and kind of cherry pick them if they want to.
Now
so we kind of put a stop to that.
Yeah.
Now you're guiding. You do both open water and ice fishing, correct?
Just open water.
Okay, you just personally do the ice fishing. That isn't
correct
with the guiding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I have had some interest in ice fishing, and I've kind of tossed it around. It's I don't know. It's a little dicey because now you're responsible for taking people on the ice and what might not be best conditions, and it's a lot of work. Even when you're doing it personally, it's a lot of work. So
right, and you're talking about
it's
a
still
river,
a possibility, but
yeah.
Well, speaking of ice fishing, I think anyone who logged on to listen to this episode to hear you talk probably knew the history with the fish. Tell us about that fish. You currently hold the catch and release record for the state of Minnesota for the sturgeon.
Yeah, so that one was caught last year in February, kind of late ice. It's normally kind of a slow period when we're catching them that late in the season. It seems like first ice is kind of the best when we get out there, but I kind of fish throughout the year. But anyways, a friend of mine, we were out, and I think it turns out I was probably skunked the few nights leading up to that, so I didn't have a whole lot of expectations, just basically wanted to get out and do some fishing. And as it turns out, that was the only fish bite that we got all night. But yeah, we hooked into a pretty big one. It was 78 inches.
Yeah,
78 inches, and I don't know that you actually got a weight on it, but I think I read that you figured 120 pounds.
Yeah, they have a length girth chart. There's some formulas you can do, and it's surprisingly accurate. I have weighed, probably hundreds of these things just to kind of check it against the chart, and it's actually pretty accurate. It's probably within 10%. So somewhere, something like that, 110 to 130, somewhere in there.
So now when something like that bites when you're ice fishing, can you, do they bite hard, or do they just kind of come up and grab it? And how can you really tell when it hits your bait?
So I think bite detection, open water and ice fishing is probably the most critical thing for catching these fish, so I've actually watched them on camera. They'll kind of hover over your bait almost like a spaceship, and they'll just suck your bait up. And sometimes they'll actually spit it out, suck it in, and spit it out, almost like they're filtering, what they're feeding on, or maybe even just, making sure they're not taking in rocks and stuff. But so when they're doing that, you see your rod just barely moving, or your line twitching, or through the ice. I like to just use a foam bobber, and you just barely see the bobber twitching. And what I do then is I just lift, and if I feel weight, I just lift a little harder. Mm-hmm. I use all circle hooks in the open water, and they seem to work pretty well. You just give them pressure, and they're hooked up, and they got these rubbery lips, so they stay hooked up pretty well.
Right. I just thought maybe a lot of people would think a fish that weighs 120 pounds. It's like you better have a hold of that rod when it hits because it's going to be going. But it does seem like they just be like a real light bite type deal.
Yeah, there are times when you're not paying attention, or it's windy and you got bow in your line. They will take your bait and actually kind of hook themselves.
All right.
And then they swim away. Well, once they feel pressure, then they're taken off. And your rod will try to rip your rod holder off. So if you're not paying attention, that does happen. But for the most part, you want to keep a real close eye. I tell people I take out, I said, we have to be like ninjas watching our rod tips, because if you don't get to it, they're gone.
Did you know instantly, whoa, this is a special fish? Or when they get to be that big, do they all kind of feel the same at first? Or
when I lifted up on it, you can usually feel the weight. I knew it was a big fish. I had no idea it was, the size it was until I actually seen it. You're thinking the whole time, there's times when it gets wrapped up around the tail, so it kind of comes in unnatural, kind of sideways or something. But yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this fish is not coming through the holes we have drilled here.
Take us through the fight. How long did it take? I mean, this isn't, something that you set the hook on and just started pulling in. I mean, this had to take quite a period of time.
Yeah, initially I think it took about 25 minutes to finally get it to the bottom of the ice. And we're using ice rods. I mean, they're custom made, but they're a lot stiffer than I would compare it to a heavy lake trout rod probably. Mm-hmm. And we're using 50-pound line with I think it's a 2000 series reel, maybe 2500. I take that back. It might be 4000. At any rate, it's basically a walleye reel. So yeah, the ice was about 20. I want to say it was like 26 inches thick that day. So about 20-25 minutes, we finally got it up to the bottom of the ice, and I seen it. And we only had 2 holes drilled at that point. We normally drill 3, but for whatever reason, I didn't drill that last third hole. And I kind of regret it now. But at any rate, we just had the 2 there, and I said, well, this ain't going to work. We're going to have to drill another hole. So we let the fish go back down, and we drilled a third hole, overlapping kind of in a triangle pattern. And we brought it back up, and my friend's like, he's not coming in 3 holes even. So at that point, I have a drill set up, a hand drill with a K drill, and I was having issues with my battery. It just was kind of cutting out. So I said, we have this Minnesota sturgeon fishing group that a bunch of people, there's like 2,000 members in that group. I said, ping that group and see if anyone's fishing tonight, and we'll just flash our light, and they can come help us if they have like a 10-inch auger would be preferable. So, yeah, he made a post, and I'd say within 5 minutes, someone replied and said, we're coming over to help. So these guys came over, some guys we had never met, and introduced ourselves, and they got to town drilling us 2 more holes. It was funny because you don't realize how much slush is in these holes when you have 26 inches of ice until you're piling it right next to the holes with this huge mound of slush next to us, and we had covered up a prior set of holes, and at one point I had actually fell in that hole fighting the fish, and it was a circus. I think all told it was about an hour and a half before we got the fish to the top of the ice.
Wow, that is crazy.
Basically, I had to fight them 3 times.
So you had a total of 5 holes then?
Yeah. Yep.
And that whole entire, well, not the whole entire video, but you have that up on YouTube, most of the video, correct?
Yeah, I think it's about 11 minutes long, the video. So I cut out, obviously quite a bit, but most of the fight is on there. The highlights of the fight is on there, basically what we went through. So, yeah, that video kind of took off. It's kind of fun to watch now. Go back and watch it. Pretty fun.
Yeah,
I'm glad I captured it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, because sometimes people don't believe you unless you have the video proof, and you do.
And I also got a lot of grief about it too, because I was using a treble hook. First of all, people were giving me grief using a treble hook at all, and I kind of tell people, when you're fishing straight up and down through the ice, the circle hooks just don't work like they're supposed to. They don't turn.
Okay.
So I just used some beads and a treble hook and a egg sinker, and I don't know. So as we were fighting this fish, the hook it must have popped out or something. So it was hooked kind of on the outside of the mouth, and people giving me grief about it being snagged and all this stuff. But I know what I saw, and it was hooked in the mouth at one point. So
right.
And there's no real way to snag the side of a fish if I mean,
through the ice.
You're obviously not out there throwing a treble hook and jerking it back like you would in open water. I mean, through the ice, it obviously went to bite.
And no matter,
I mean, that's how I understand snagging being, kind of like paddle fishing or snagging carp below a dam or something. But I think we were in 36 feet of water with a foam bobber. I just got it sitting there and we're staring at it. So
yeah.
I mean, that's what we do. So
and no matter what, that with how social media works, everybody, there's always going to be somebody that wants to have a negative comment or, yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. and just got to roll with it, I guess.
Well, it's an incredible video, that's for sure. We watched it a bunch of times.
Yeah. Now, is that the biggest fish ever caught in Minnesota history? I mean, is that...
That's what I'm told, and as far as I know, it might be the biggest fish ever caught through the ice. Period.
Well, I mean, we've hooked into some, but they got off. So
yeah, we let them go.
Right.
Yeah, you know how that goes. Yeah, we could have broke that, but yeah.
Now you held the record previously before that too, correct?
Yeah. So they started this catch and release record. I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So obviously there was a bar to be set, and I'm kind of involved with a lot of stuff with the DNR and just a lot of social media stuff. I'm kind of engaged with all that, and I was really happy to see they did this. So obviously I wanted to make sure that we started getting some fish entered. So it was one of the first ones entered that I got the record. So it was still cool to have it, but I knew it was going to get beat, which it did, 4 or 5 times after that.
Well, it was 67 inches, right?
It was 67 inches, so it was a big fish.
Yeah, but that's no slouch.
But like I said, it did get beat 3 or 4 times after that, which is cool. I want to see this one get beat. I hope someone beats it.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about the records.
Now, knowing what you know, do you believe that record will be beat? I mean, do you believe that there's bigger fish down there yet?
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Wow.
I've seen pictures of some. I've seen pictures of 80 plus. So they're out there.
Wow. Now
that's what I tell my my guests I take out. I said every single bite, the next bite could be a record. They're out there.
Yeah,
and even if it's a 100-pound fish, the next bite could be a 100-pound fish. That's what's so cool.
Yeah.
Now, what's the process of declaring it the state record with that catch and release formula? What were the hoops that you had to jump through? Was the video important in that, or how does somebody do that?
I think anything you can provide to them helps. So I had the video. I had video showing the length. We had a tape measure out, showing the length from the nose to the tip of the tail. Pictures. I basically just bundled stuff up and sent it to the DNR and let them make their decision. So officially, I think you need at least a picture or video showing the length clearly. You have to fill out the application. You have to have a witness sign it. And I believe that's about it.
All right.
Okay.
So, but I'm really glad they're doing it. I'd like to see them expanded to more species. Because there's only muskie, I believe it's only muskie, pike, flathead, and sturgeon at this point. So.
Oh, really? Huh.
Now, are you all catch and release on all your stuff that you fish?
I am. I will, if people want to catch or keep some small channels, I'm fine with that, and I've done that on my guide trips. The thing with sturgeon, I don't necessarily think harvest is bad for sturgeon, but it's actually pretty tough to harvest one if you want to on the St. Croix, because the slot is 60 inches, and it's 1 per year per person. So it's like tagging a deer. You get a tag, you buy a tag, it's like $5, and it has to be 60 inches or bigger, and you tag it and register it. And just the physical aspect of keeping a 60-inch fish is kind of difficult, when you want to keep one. So.
Yeah, you don't put one of them in the live well.
Right. Yeah, you either toss it on the bottom of your boat or tie it up by the tail or something and drag it in or something. But no, I'd much rather prefer just releasing them all.
Now, you mentioned a tag there. Say if me and Matt would decide to come up there, do we need to buy a tag just to target sturgeon, or that's strictly if we're going to keep one?
You only need a tag if you're going to keep one. You can catch and release basically all year without a tag. So yeah, it's not needed. It's only if you want to keep one. And the season runs from, I believe it's June 1st through March 1st. There's a period there where they kind of shut it down for spawning. So.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how much longer do you figure your guide season will go here with the open water on these sturgeon? When
so
does
I'll
it
go
normally
right to
lock
ice.
up?
Basically, the last day that I can go out. If people want to go out, I'll take them. So it's kind of a niche thing, hardcore thing. If people want to get out there and sit in front of a buddy heater out in the boat with their ice gear on, but you're often rewarded quite well when you're out there late in the year because big ones really put the feed bag on.
Can a kid do this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Like I said, the other night I had a couple of 14-year-olds. They were catching some nice ones. I got a trip coming up here. A couple of 14-year-olds booked a trip for themselves. So
Nice.
I'm taking them out without any moms or dads or anything. So that'll be interesting.
There's some kids that know what they're doing.
Yeah. There is hope for the next generation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I thought it was pretty cool. I did give his mom a buzz just to make sure everything was
Right.
good, because that's, you got to be cautious about that,
Oh, yeah.
the whole responsibility thing.
Where are you guys at? We're out fishing.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
I don't have kids myself, so I don't know the whole protocol about taking other people's kids out.
No, man, that's very cool, and we really appreciate you swinging in, Darren. Before we let you go, you want to tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you, where they can find you, social media, websites, phone number, whatever you want to put out there.
Absolutely. I have a website. It's Three Rivers Fishing with the number 3, threeriversfishingadventures.com. I have a Facebook page with the same name, Three Rivers Fishing Adventures. Like I said, there's a sturgeon fishing group, Facebook group you can join. There's a lot of activity there talking about the sturgeon stuff, and there's also a catfish group. Good place to get some resources. My number, I can give you my phone number, is 612-247-1579. Feel free to give me a call and book a trip. The schedule's pretty tight for the rest of the year, but I do have some availability. There's a calendar on my website, so it shows all the open days.
Very cool.
Right, nice.
We need to get up there and give that a shot.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, catch. Well, not as big as me. I'm taller than me, just not as round as me. So.
What's really cool is the first fish people usually catch with these sturgeon is usually the biggest fish they've ever caught. So,
Right.
And it's pretty consistent. We get, I've had 20 plus fish nights out there, and it's generally 5 to 10, but we get a lot of them sometimes. I think the most I've caught is 60 to 70 in a night. So
Holy moly!
it gets pretty crazy.
Wow.
Might have to take work off for a few days after that
Right.
to rest up.
Chiropractors get business off you. No. Well, yeah, like we said, we really appreciate you swinging in. That is two species that we've never covered here on the Midwest Angler Podcast, and I mean to be talking with a guy who possibly caught the biggest fish ever through the ice, and the biggest fish in a state like Minnesota that's really a fishing state. That is amazing. So.
Well, I appreciate you thinking about me, and if you're ever in the area, give me a shout. We'll get you out there.
You bet.
Definitely.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you. Take care.
See ya. And that was Darren Troseth with Three Rivers Fishing Adventures up in Jordan, Minnesota. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. That's the only word that can describe
mass chaos in that fish house when he caught that one.
Oh yeah. If you guys have not seen the video, go on YouTube.
Check it out.
I don't know what the actual video is called, but I know his handle is DTro Fish On, and it's DTRO Fish On, no spaces, DTro Fish On, and it'll be the first one that comes up. I mean, this thing's been viewed a lot of times.
Right, it's worth watching.
It is. And
I mean, I can't imagine having, while you're fighting a fish and having other people drill holes next to the holes that you have.
If that thing switches directions, you're done.
Right, it just...
And you know the caliber of that fish that's down there, insane. Absolutely insane.
The first time they get it up to the ice, I don't know what I would do if I hooked into something. I think that I was hooked to the bottom of the ice.
Right, and then he said he dropped a leg in one of the holes too. Oh my God! I mean, there's stuff flying everywhere. There's people everywhere. Oh man, you're battling the biggest fish ever caught in the state of Minnesota. What a freaking mess!
And when you start pulling that thing out of the hole, when they do start pulling the thing out of the hole,
it just never ends.
It's just like, like one person grabs and pulling it up, and then another one, and then another. It's like a whole assembly line of people, and this fish just keeps coming and coming and coming.
Yeah, it's like an anaconda. Is that thing ever gonna quit? Oh man, no.
But
wow.
I mean, just awesome. I mean, we've both caught flatheads before, and we use some I used to go up on trips with my dad and some of his friends up to the Minnesota River, and we've caught some big ones up there. I mean, just the flatheads too. Sometimes you get lost with his accomplishment of catching that big sturgeon. That the amount of big catfish that he catches too. I mean, definitely check him out if you want something different. I mean,
that's the place up there too.
It is.
Yeah.
He's always on the fish.
Right. I think that's the place, and he's the guy.
Right.
I'm telling you that right now for free. No, we actually, last February when he caught that fish, me and Matt had messaged him, and that was shortly after we started the podcast, and at that point in time, we didn't have the whole phone interview deal.
Right.
And we were going to drive up there to Jordan, Minnesota. He had agreed to sit down and talk with us, and we were pumped. And what was it, 2 weekends in a row? It was just flat out blizzards.
Yeah.
And it was like, golly, we can't get up there. And then, it kind of goes by, and, we still got to do episodes, and the buzz dies down or whatever. But, yeah, he's definitely somebody who's been on our radar for a long time. Like, hey, we need to get this guy because and it's just such a different topic. We talk walleyes. We talk bass.
You don't hear a lot of guys that guide for catfish or sturgeon.
Right.
I mean, let alone both of them. And, most of the guys around here, they're guiding for, if you want to go fish catfish, I'm sure they would, fish for them. But usually it's, the panfish, the walleyes, the bass, things like that. But, to be able to go do something like that, different species and different techniques, it's always fun because we talk about it all the time that we love catching any fish anywhere.
Yeah. Carp.
So definitely if you're looking, give him a call, look him up on his website, and book a trip.
You bet. All right, Matt. Well, I got something for you.
Uh-oh.
I want to ask you a question here.
Ask me. I'm in the hot seat. Do I get any lifelines? Can I phone a friend?
No, this is a simple question.
I don't think I'd be able to phone any friends because you're sitting right here. I don't know if I don't have much other friends, so.
Yeah. Well, you can call me. Now that Darren ain't online, you can call me and ask me. I got a question here. Would you ever use a term in fishing about the fish you're catching that has a definition of to kill a person or animal in a violent way?
What do you mean? Like we're slaughtering the fish or what?
Slay
the fish.
Slay the fish.
Slay all day. I don't know if I would say slay.
Is that? I mean, I've used the term.
I think I have too.
I think everybody has.
We're slaying them.
Yeah, went out and slayed the fish.
We've also said we're murdering them.
But I just feel like the word slay in the fishing industry really, especially in the last year or two, has really come on popular. Like, I mean, whenever anyone goes out there and catches a lot of fish, they're always using the term slay. And I mean, I'm not going to throw this company under the bus, but I mean, there are companies in the fishing industry that are slayer. I mean, I think that there's even a tournament organization right now with the word slayer in it. Yeah. And I mean, it's just like, when I finally looked at the definition, it was like, whoa.
Wow, yeah. I think that we'd be surprised at, like, some of the terms that we use sometimes, that if we actually really looked up the definitions, it's kind of like, maybe I wouldn't do that. And, us as conservationists and everything like that, too, sometimes we got to be careful of the words that we pick so that, like, people that are against, say, fishing or hunting, they can kind of jump on those keywords sometimes and just keep going after it and picking, like we sit there and say, well, we're not out here to kill the fish and stuff like that, but when we're like using terms as like slaying or murdering or anything like that, then I guess I can see, yeah.
And I don't want to be that guy, I don't want to, but like you said, hunting especially, but it's getting to be even fishing now.
Oh yeah, you see PETA all over fishing stuff and harassing fishermen and stuff like that it's, it hurts the fish and they have feelings and all this stuff. So
what do you think fish is feeling when you
my thumb on the bottom of his lip if it's a big old bass? That's what it's feeling. I know what I'm feeling.
Yeah, plain and simple.
I mean, I'm trying to cause them least amount of pain as possible. I'm just come on into the boat. Don't fight so hard.
How many times have you had a conversation with a fish?
A lot.
When you get it in and it's flopping around and you're just trying to unhook it, and most of the time you're even on a catch and release deal. It's like, dude, just sit still so that I can unhook you and I'll throw you back in.
I kind of tried to use the whole Barry White thing. I kind of go just kind of like, yeah, just calm down, baby. Just relax. Talk sweet to him.
Golly, when you say you love to fish, I don't know. Sorry about that, Emily, but
just chill.
I feel like I'm like aiding in a.
It depends what it is. Depends what kind of fish it is. If it's like a bullhead or something like that, then just calm.
Then you're a little.
Then I'm a little more stern with them.
Stern,
and, they got those catfish sometimes too. They got things that can stab you, and
you got to
northern
be
with the teeth and the gill plates. They need to those northern sometimes. They just need to calm down and just relax a little bit. It's like, come on now, fellas and ladies, just chill out. We'll get you back in the water.
Me and you have been doing pretty good with the northerns on just getting them up to the top of the water and just kind of giving them a little slack line, and boom, they're gone.
Pop them off, and it's like, yeah.
Oh God, they stink.
Oh yeah, they do it, and then all this just getting slime and but I know what you're saying there with the words and the key words.
I don't know, like I don't want to be a sensitive guy. Like that's not what I'm after.
But you're sensitive no matter what. I mean,
for Pete's sakes, you were the one that was just caressing up fish.
Yeah, no, I was talking sweet to him. You got to talk sweet to him sometimes. Just whip out the inner Barry White, just to calm him down.
Yeah. You know what? After Darren got off the phone, this episode really went off the rails.
You brought it up.
I did.
Remember that. You're the one that wanted to talk about.
I think we're going to do a do-over in the outro. So
slaying them.
All righty. Well, that's episode 45. Sorry
we'll
that we
keep
lost
slaying
you
the
there.
episodes.
All righty. We are out of here. See ya.